Hi, folks. Welcome to our Wednesday, May 5th edition of the Financial Facts Chat. I'm Bruce McClary, and I am going to be covering a lot of topics today. This is definitely not a boring day when it comes to the world of personal finance, when it comes to your questions, and when it comes to breaking news, which we do have at the top of the program here. And I'm just kind of keeping an eye on what's happening in the world of breaking news. So I want to get started first with some news about the developments with housing and specifically with renters, and just talk a little bit about what's happening with the decision today that was the ruling on the CDC renter eviction moratorium. But before I get to it, I just want to make sure that you know that if you have questions during the program, and I'm going to do my absolute best to address your questions during the program, but if you have questions during the program, please let me know in the chat feature, and I'll try to get to your questions as quickly as possible, because I know there are a lot of questions about budgeting or credit reports. There are questions about student loans that you might have, and I want to make sure I address all of those. And of course, as always, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you like what you're seeing here, we absolutely appreciate you watching, and we appreciate you engaging with the content. This is very important. Budgeting, personal finance is really important, and we want to be a good resource for you. So please share your feedback and let us know. But let's get to the breaking news before we do anything else, and then we can get to your questions, and we can talk about some of the topics, and we can talk a little bit about Teacher Appreciation Week and share some thoughts about that, because it's a very, very important topic. And we want to make sure that we give teachers their fair appreciation for what they do. So let's go and talk about the breaking news. So as has happened before, we're starting our live stream with some breaking personal finance news. This could have major implications for some of the millions who are at risk of eviction. So I want to share what we know in the moment, where people can look for help, and what updates are available as the story develops by the minute and by the hour. And right now it's developing by the minute. Here's what we know. According to reports from numerous news outlets, earlier today, a federal judge in Washington, D.C. ruled that the renter eviction moratorium put in place by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, must be set aside. And as a refresher, just so you know, the ban was initially put in place last year, and it provides protection for renters out of concern based on public health implications resulting from evictions during the pandemic. So based on the CDC perspective, it made sense to go ahead and get involved in this because of the public health concerns that stem from evictions. But today's ruling asserts the legal opinion that the CDC lacks authority to impose that kind of moratorium. And at least in the moment, right now, it's not clear if there's going to be any kind of appeal, but there is still the question about what resources are available for those among the millions who are facing eviction at the moment right now. So I know it's probably reasonable to react to this with stress and shock if you're in a situation where you're facing eviction. But let's just take a deep breath and take a step back and look at what resources might be available to those who are facing eviction right now. What resources remain available, and what steps you can take if you are shocked by the news and feel you're impacted directly. Because most importantly, it's about connecting with the right resources to keep the worst from happening, or at least to work out some solutions. So on that front, there are, and this is back of the napkin here. But on that front, there are about 19 out of the 50 states with varying degrees of renter protection. those measures on the state level, at least as far as I can tell, do not appear to be directly impacted by today's ruling. So that's good news in some way. And some of those states in the yes category, where they do provide protection against eviction, some of those are a pretty clear-cut yes, and others are a yes, but. So there are some conditions and factors involved in who qualifies and who doesn't. So it's not entirely clear-cut, but for details on those resources and which states provide protection, I'm going to put in the comments section here a link to a page where you can get updates. And let me make sure that I'm posting this on all of our feeds. I'll do my best to see if this works, but it's a good website. It's NOLO. NOLO is the website, and it should be popping up in the comments section right here. It's www.nolo.com/evictions-ban. And I'll go ahead and put that up on screen just so you can see the website there. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer here, that website as a resource is privately maintained, and because of that, and because they're pulling from a number of different sources, it's one of those situations where the information that they're providing in the moment may not be completely up to date, because as I said, things are changing minute by minute with this. So use that as a first step, but I would say as a backstop to make sure that that information is truly up to date. And if you are in fact facing eviction and you're concerned about your circumstances, I would cross-check that information with your local legal aid office, your nonprofit legal aid office, because you may qualify for legal aid assistance, and you can reach out to them to make sure that the information you're seeing on that web page also applies to your circumstances, and then whether you're protected or not. But again, back of the napkin, 19 out of the 50 states provide some clear-cut guidance on whether there's renter protection and what that is in those states. Other states, it does not appear that there's any specific renter protection available. There may be other resources available for renters, like protection from utility shutoffs and things like that. That information is also available in that link that I provided on screen and in the comments. So make sure you're using that resource as you need to. So I think just in terms of final word on this, another resource you can use if you are facing eviction is nonprofit credit counseling. And nonprofit credit counseling agencies are here to help you understand your options and to more clearly understand your financial circumstances as you're facing a type of crisis like eviction and dealing with it in the moment. So if you're facing eviction, you haven't already consulted a nonprofit credit counseling agency and talked to a nonprofit financial professional for advice, I strongly recommend speaking to an NFCC certified counselor who's equipped to offer advice and resources for a broad range of housing situations, including rental housing. So it's very important to look at your entire financial circumstance when you're in that situation. And I am going to share a link to help you connect with a nonprofit credit counseling agency if you're in that situation. And I'll put that up on the screen as well. And again, a nonprofit credit counseling agency not only can help you with guidance related to your rental situation, but they can also address some of the other issues that you're dealing with in this crisis circumstance that may involve debt that you owe, bills that are piling up, your budget going off the rails. So take advantage of that while you're looking for legal options as well through other resources to help avoid eviction and put your financial circumstances back on track. So I just want to mention that and let you know that there is help. There are resources. Just because of the announcement about the CDC renter eviction protections, don't assume that all hope is lost, because there are resources available to help you out. And the link right here on screen is one of them. I posted it in the comments section. Please make use of that. Also, I want to reiterate as we go through the program, if you have questions, and Tiffany, I appreciate your feedback on that link that I gave out earlier. That is a really good website for resources. The NOLO website, I've referred to it a lot. We at the National Foundation for Credit Counseling, we are not lawyers. So anytime there's something that involves legal resources or interpretation of state regulations or federal regulations, I'll point people over there. You can look at the information. You can check out their resource base. I think it's really good to use. So we do have some questions that came in earlier, and I also see some questions are coming in on the chat. And again, I would say for news related to the ruling, I would point you to the major news resources: the Associated Press, the Los Angeles Times, Forbes, CNN, any of the major resources. I don't want to put a single link up just for one news article because they're taking different perspectives and looking at it in different ways. So just search CDC renter eviction moratorium, and you'll pull up in today's headlines. You'll see what the ruling is. But let's talk about some of the questions that were submitted to see what we have here. Oh, and before we do that, I just want to go back to the issue of Teacher Appreciation Week. We love teachers. We love what they do, whether it's K through 12 or our colleges and universities. They're all doing great work. And I think one of the ways that teachers are really helpful is by providing our children and our young adults a solid base of financial education. And there are a lot of different ways that schools are providing access to financial education. There are a lot of ways that organizations are supplementing that effort. And I definitely want to give a shout out to our friends at Jumpstart. They do a great job in promoting financial education and supporting those who wish to make sure that young adults and children are provided adequate access to the tools they need to make better financial decisions as adults. So thank you, teachers, and thanks to all the organizations that support teachers in that effort to educate our children about personal finance. It's not an unimportant task, and your work is very appreciated. So now let's get to your questions. Let's see. The first question that we have coming in is from someone who is trying to pay down debt. They're trying to decide which debt to pay first, and they have a goal of eventually buying their first house. So congratulations on working towards that goal. They currently have the following debts. They have an RV loan at about 5.5%, a car loan at about 4%, and a student loan at about 3%. It's at 2.79. So paying down those debts is their one option they're considering. Or should they focus all of their attention on paying down or on saving up for the down payment? So save up for the down payment or pay down the debt. So here's my advice for the person who's grappling with this decision. Both the car and the RV are collateralized loans with relatively low interest rates compared to credit cards and other types of debt. And the same goes for the interest rate on the student loans. What's not clear from the question is how much is owed on those loans. And I think that's where the crux of the issue is when you're deciding whether you should pay down the debt or save up for the down payment for the purchase of the home. The amount of debt that you owe could actually end up being a factor when you're applying for a mortgage or most any other type of loan. And it could also impact the loan approval itself and other terms of the loan. So as we've mentioned before in this live stream and in some of the Ask an Expert blogs, lenders look for a debt to income ratio below 36% when it comes to most mortgage approval processes. And of course, a maximum of 28% of that allocated to your mortgage. So if you keep that in mind, you go back and you look at the amount of the debt. Don't look at the interest rates right now. Just look at the total amount of the debt and think about how it would impact the mortgage loan application process. Using that basic calculation, you can see what the lenders are looking for. And that may be the deciding factor here of your focus of whether to aggressively pay down the debt or whether to put your money in for the down payment and save up for that. So definitely something to keep in mind. And for that purpose, I just want to say that we have some calculators on our website, and I just want to post this in the comments section. So we have some planning tools on our website that I'll put up on screen as well. See if that link fits. It's a long link, but those can help you decide whether or not, which option might be best for you if you're thinking about aggressively saving up, and how to prioritize paying down debt, which is another comment. I saw a comment about smallest balance credit card first, with using the snowball versus avalanche. So if you're determining based on credit card debt and you're dealing with high interest debt, that's a really good approach, is to use what's most motivating in seeing results early. And smallest credit cards first give you those early results, keep you motivated to stay on track. May not be the most cost-effective way to pay off the debt, but it does give you early results. But again, we have calculators on our website that can help you determine what methods are best for paying off debt quickly if you want to aggressively tackle the debt. But in terms of the mortgage, I would say this: focus on your debt to income ratio, focus on the amount of debt you have, see if that's going to be an issue that gets in the way of the mortgage approval. Then you can start deciding how you're going to allocate your money, down payment versus paying down debt. We have another question here about a mortgage loan. This is somebody who already owns a home, has a mortgage. The original mortgage loan was $210,000. They have a remaining balance of $197,000. They mentioned their interest rate here. Not really going to go into that. That's not necessarily the issue. The issue is the PMI, which is $60 a month. And they're asking if they should focus on making additional principal payments every month to get rid of the PMI, or would it be better to take all the extra money they have, invest it, and then at some point later make a lump sum principal payment to get to the point where they can clear the PMI? That's a really good question. A lot of homeowners ask about this, if they're required to have PMI as a part of the mortgage. So this, I appreciate the opportunity to address this. So first, let me talk about private mortgage insurance, which is what the PMI letters stand for. It's commonly a requirement when you have a conventional loan and you make a down payment of less than 20% of the home's purchase price, or if you refinance with a conventional loan and your equity is less than 20% of the value of your home. Either case, you end up being required to pay. It's likely that you end up required to pay the PMI. So the good news is that you're not stuck with it forever. You don't necessarily have to be stuck with it forever. You have the right to request your servicer cancel the PMI when you've reached a time when the principal balance of your mortgage is scheduled to fall below or at or below 80% of the original value of your home. So, we understand now where you need to be in terms of reaching the point where you can request that the PMI is removed. And in this example, if the amount of 210, the original mortgage amount of 210 is equal to the value of the home at the time of the purchase, then we can assume that 168,000 is the target loan balance. And again, this is back of the napkin math. There's the issue of interest rate, et cetera. Not going to get into that. So in simple calculation, that's where we're trying to head. So there's roughly, again, back of the napkin, $29,000 to go. Question is, do you put that money in investments and try to get to that target? Or do you take it incrementally, try to work yourself to that target faster by paying principal payments? So again, I think to help you get to that point, with the incremental payments or with, working towards that lump sum pay down, the main thing is what gets you to the earlier result, because that's going to save you the most money. Is it piling the money into investments, seeing if your money grows fast enough to get to the point where you can just go ahead and shut off that $60 a month PMI, or make the request and be free of that by paying down your mortgage? or do you incrementally apply the money to principal? I honestly think that a lot of it depends on the savings vehicle you use and its performance and how it's performing. So you need to compare that to the impact that your extra payments towards principal, the impact that might have, and work out a timeline. And again, I'd go back to the calculator that we posted on screen. I kept it up for this purpose, to use the mortgage payment calculator, to use our savings calculators and do a cross-reference and see what you get there. Another factor here too is, it can be the type of mortgage that you have. I noticed one of the viewers here commenting about FHA or conventional. Again, the question did not indicate what type of mortgage this is. So you might want to look into that issue as well. So I would recommend, again, going to the calculator, using that to determine what approach would be best, and then, working that out. So that's one thing to do. But again, stay on track by keeping a close eye on your balance and how your strategy is working. The next thing that we have another question, and I know we're getting close to the end of time here that we have. So we have two questions. I'm going to try to get these as quickly as possible, and then we'll get to the question that was submitted in the comments. But this one person here is asking, they have an old credit card debt from years ago. The company has offered to settle, indicating that the person probably still owes money on that account. Doesn't appear that a settlement is going to improve their credit score. It's true that settlement may not be the best option in terms of improving your credit health. Would it be better to let it fall off after the 6-year statute in the state where this person lives? Otherwise, they're indicating they're in great financial health, and this is really the only bad mark on their credit report, is this collection account from this old credit card debt. And so there's a lot that is related to things that aren't clear in the way this question was presented. So in the simplest terms, if you want to try to run out the clock, you're dealing with a couple of issues here. Depending on where they are with the statute of limitations, it is possible that if you don't respond to the settlement offer, they may escalate the account and try to pursue all of their legal remedies to collect the debt, which could include taking you to court, ultimately leading to wage garnishment, et cetera, et cetera. You absolutely don't want that to happen. So by, crawling away and hiding for a while, you run the risk of not being in control of that process. In other words, leading them to take actions that you're not aware of that have much more significant consequences. So it's a tough call. I always encourage people to pay the debt that they owe if they possibly can, or to work things out to make sure that the debts are fully resolved. But if you want to run out the clock and see if it works out that way, that is a personal decision that you have to make. But I'm just saying that in the intervening time, the creditor could take legal action against you if that is something allowed based on your circumstances and the state laws where you live. So just be careful and understand what this is. It's kind of like a game of Russian roulette or a game of chicken that you're playing as the clock runs out. And it can be pretty risky. So putting on my debt collector hat, I used to be a debt collector. I can also say this: when they're determining whether or not to escalate an account and take legal action, the amount owed is often a factor. The amount owed combined with other information they have on where you are, where you work, et cetera, because a warrant has to be served if they take legal action, et cetera. So if you're reasonably sure that the balance is so low that it's not worth their effort to take you to court, or if they don't have sufficient contact information to be able to put all those things together and issue a warrant in debt, you may be more comfortable with waiting out the clock, but it's still no guarantee. So I wish you luck with that in deciding. But if it were me, if I wanted to be on the safe side, I would go ahead and accept their settlement offer or if I had the financial means to do so, I would even go ahead and pay off the balance. That always looks better on your credit. So hope that answer helps. So yes, Tiffany, thank you for your question. That is correct. If you get an appraisal, the value falls below 78% of the PMI, or 78% of if your balance falls below 78% of the value of the newly appraised value of the home, then the PMI can be removed on the Fannie Mae loans. I believe that is correct. So thank you for asking that question. That is helpful in somebody with a Fannie Mae loan. The last question we have, and we're running really close to time, and there's a lot to pack in with this one, has to do with credit reports and credit score. So the person asking the question wants to improve their credit score, but they're not finding information online that's applicable to their circumstances. Their current score is 662 or 660, depending on the credit scoring system. And we know that there's FICO and there's Vantage Score and there are other variants. But more specifically, they're finding that in each category, like on-time payments and oldest credit, and all of those major categories, that they're performing well. So they're kind of wondering, they're curious if all the categories are either good or excellent, yet their credit score remains the same. How can they improve from 662 to 750 if everything appears good? I love this question because it sort of peels back the layers of what you need to be looking at with your credit score. And it can be more than frustrating when what we know about the scoring process doesn't align with the results that we're seeing in terms of our own score. I've heard that from people I know. They pound the table and they're frustrated and they're wondering why their score isn't higher, because based on everything they see in front of them, it should be. And it's even worse in this case because we know the average credit score on the FICO scale right now is about 711. So these scores that are being reported by this individual are below average. So they want to get above average. They want to get to 750. How do they do that? In the simplest terms, we can essentially explain what goes into that credit score pie. 35% of our score is determined by our payment history, 30% by amounts owed, 15% by the length of our credit history, and a split 20%, 10 and 10, for new credit inquiries and types of credit. So new credit inquiries accounting for up to 10%, and type of credit, which is your diversity of your overall credit profile, as being the other 10%. So those are the more minor factors. What may be the case, and I'm drawing a lot of assumptions because it's hard to know without seeing the report or knowing more detail, is that the issue may be related to your debt ratio, which accounts for 30% of your score calculation. That's the amounts owed category. So it could be that, and part of it could be driven by your account diversity as well, the different types of accounts that you have on your credit report, the variety that's represented. But my guess is that the driver here is that the balances that you owe are above, at or above, more likely above 30% of your assigned credit limits. I could be wrong, but that's a biggie. So you might want to look at how much you owe on these revolving accounts, whether or not the balances are above the 30% threshold of your assigned credit limit, and look at strategies to get those balances back down. And again, I've left this link to the to our planning tools and calculators, because we do have debt repayment calculators that can help you figure out the best strategies, what to do. We talked about debt snowball. We talked about debt avalanche. You can certainly power pay those accounts down. And as you do that, if you are in that high debt ratio category, the lower you bring your balances, the more likely you're going to see some clear results in the increase of your credit score. So keep that in mind as well. And I hope that works. And of course, if you're in a situation where it's getting difficult to manage your debt because your balances are so high, I would also recommend reaching out to the link that we posted earlier, connecting with a nonprofit credit counselor and getting help that way. So that's an important resource that's available for you as you work on ways to help pay down your debt. As we close the program, I just want to mention, and I want to thank Lisa Frankenberger from CCCS of Buffalo, who appeared as a guest on last week's stream. If you haven't seen that yet, you can go back through the feed, pull that up and watch it. She gave us some really good insight into what happens during a credit counseling session with a nonprofit credit counseling agency. I would also encourage you to go back and look at some other previous episodes where we talk a little bit about that same issue as well, so you clearly understand how a credit counseling session works, how easy it is to access, and what the benefits are afterwards. But I think Lisa did an excellent job talking about CCCS of Buffalo, what her agency does, and how they help. We also spoke offline with Amy Maliga from Take Charge America, also a nonprofit credit counseling agency and an NFCC member. And similar to what we heard last week when we spoke to Lisa Frankenberger, Amy from Take Charge America mentioned that a credit counseling session is a great way to learn more about the range of options that are available to help you tackle your credit and your budget challenges. And it's also, there's a very low barrier of entry because this is a service that is available to everyone. There's no income requirement. There's no debt level requirement. You can plug in, you can talk to a nonprofit credit counselor and talk to them about some of your financial challenges and get really helpful advice. But the other thing that Amy mentioned that, again, is a similar approach at Take Charge America, as is with what Lisa talked about at CCS of Buffalo, is that you can start a counseling session without having to go through all of the data gathering and form filling that you may think is required at the beginning. It's helpful to share that information before the counseling starts, but if you don't have all the information you need about the debts that you owe, about your budget categories, even about your income, don't feel like that's a showstopper. You should still connect with a credit counselor. You should still start the conversation. They can help you work through some of the challenges of gathering the information that is going to be helpful to them in rendering a decision and offering advice and guidance that's most applicable to your circumstances. So I thought that was reassuring, what Amy mentioned in their approach at Take Charge America, as it was similar to CCCS of Buffalo and other NFCC member agencies as well. So I think if you want to find out more about credit counseling and what happens in the credit counseling sessions, I'm going to post a link on screen that can kind of give you a little bit more of a flavor about what takes place in a credit counseling session. I'm just going to show that here. And it's in the comment section as well. I encourage you to visit that. That's on the NFCC website. And if you want to check out Take Charge America, I'm going to post their link as well, just as we did with CCCS of Buffalo last week. And you can check out Take Charge America. It's in the comment section, and find out a little bit more about that agency and what Amy does there as well. So again, thanks for tuning in. We ran a little bit over. We had so much to cover, especially with the breaking news on the renter eviction moratorium, the CDC, and the ruling today by the federal judge in Washington, D.C. There's much more to come on that. But just, again, to reassure renters and to reassure all of you who are concerned about that, there are state protections that are still in place. The process is probably not over with this decision on the CDC and the eviction moratorium at the federal level. As there may, we don't know yet, I haven't checked the latest news feed, but there may be a challenge to that ruling. We just don't know. Or there may be another way that the federal government addresses that. So stay tuned to that. Keep your eye on the news. Thanks for tuning in. And again, like, follow, comment, and come back next week when we're back at about the same time next Wednesday, when we'll answer more of your questions. And if you want to ask questions after the program, please go to the NFCC website and look for our Ask an Expert feature. You can ask the questions. All of the questions you submit on our Ask an Expert feature do get answered, whether they're answered directly by email or whether we answer them here on the program, as we did with the 4 questions that we talked about today. So everybody gets an answer. Hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Again, thanks to all the teachers out there. Happy Teacher Appreciation Week. And until next time, take care.